In this segment, I'm going to show you how to customize your thread chart. Now, if you look at my desktop, you can see that I have my thread chart placed along the bottom of my window. And if I mouse over top of the thread chart, you can see that it tells me here that this is number 202 Vermilion thread by Janome color palette, and this one is the 208 purple, and so on. And if you look towards the right-hand side of this color chart, you'll see that there's two small arrows which will now enable me to scroll through the different rows of colors. So if I click on the bottom arrow, you'll see that there are an additional set of colors on that. Now, I've got the color palette placed along the bottom on my workspace because that's where I like for it to be. But you can move it and have it anywhere you want. And I'm just going to grab on the handle for my color palette and move it out and just place it over top of my desktop for a moment. So now you can see a little bit more easily all of the colors in the color palette. And for example, if I pop over top, you can see there's thread names. Now, what I'm going to do is show you how to customize this color palette. And so the option is found under the Setup drop-down menu for thread colors. When that comes up, first of all, I can see that I've got 78 colors available in my color palette. And if I wanted to, I could change that number to be, well, let's just set it to 100. And if I say OK, you'll notice that the color palette grew and it now has exactly 100 colors in the color palette. Now, if I was to go back to that Setup drop-down menu, I can also control what colors are in the color palette. So right now, these are the colors that are in my color palette, and on the right would be anywhere that I could find new color palettes. So for example, if I choose well, first of all, I'm going to scroll through the list so you can see just how many brands of thread have been programmed into the software. So all of these brands, and I'll just scroll down to the bottom, are available for use with Digitizer. So just as an example, if you had Robeson Anton thread, the RA thread, if you had RA Super Bright Polyester thread, you could choose that color palette. And that's then what shows over here is the RA Super Bright color palette. Now, we still haven't changed our existing color chart. This is just a color chart of potential colors. Now, you could either do one of two things. You could replace some of the colors, or with this button here, Match and Replace All, you can actually replace all of these colors. So, for example, if I say Match and Replace All, it basically matches the colors in my color palette with colors from the RA Super Bright thread line. And so now, for example, if I look at the first color, red, it's now 9023 Indian Summer by Robeson Anton thread. So I was able to quickly convert my entire thread palette to be in a different brand of thread. Now, you can also have different brands of thread. So for example, if you had, let's go back to Janome, so I'll pick the Janome color palette and tell it to Match and Replace All. But if you said, well, actually, I have mostly Janome thread, but I always use a purple that I bought, and it's from Madeira or whatever. So I'll click on the purple. First of all, I'll come over here and choose Madeira 40s weight thread. Now, I'm going to find the purple through this list here. So I'm just going to scroll down and say, well, maybe this is the purple that I own. And instead of this 208 purple from Janome, I like to use the 1042 sort of royal purple from Madeira. I can say replace. And so now I have a blended color palette that has some Janome thread and some of Madeira thread, and you can have any number of threads you want. So you can literally build your color palette to exactly match the type of thread that you own. So if you've got a marathon yellow and you'd rather have, if you have the Janome thread, sorry, if you have marathon yellow and you'd like to replace that on your color palette, I got my words stuck around there, I can simply say replace. You can also add to the color palette. So if you say, well, actually, I also have this really dark green and I'd like to have that added to the color palette, it adds it to the end and gives me now 101 colors in my color palette. So I think you can see here how you're able to completely customize your color palette to have the colors that you use. And one of the really great things is when you change your color palette like this, then when you go and look at your printing options, all of your threads will be listed in the exact brand of thread that you chose. So that's a little bit more about how you can customize your color palette. And remember, I like to have mine along the bottom, but you can put your color palette anywhere you like. It's just a matter of moving it and placing it in place. So that's another segment about how to customize your thread chart.